Now,
Great.
I have been taking minutes.
Okay. Okay. Oh, I usually take minutes.
Okay.
Are you doing that for each committee?
I take notes just in case.
Okay. Okay, so just for the recording, we have approved the minutes from 2023 manager report. Any questions or comments from committee members?
No.
Treasurer reports? Ken, do you want to talk us through anything that you feel like FNA needs to point out?
Eventually I'm going to make some adjustments to, you guys can talk about a little bit about the fund balance. We're not really prepared to talk about it at this meeting, but our next one, we could talk about our fund balance and particularly how we're approaching capital budgeting. There are a number of budget amendments that we'll need to complete this year. And certainly if nobody's fault, there's just the way entries were finished, they weren't consistently coded to the right fund, the right line item. And so that's what's kind of delayed my efforts to finish up the budget where I wanted it to be, which would be ready to present about now. But there's just a few added steps that need to be done to make sure I verify that. I also want to put together some project budgets for you. There were projects planned and I think partially initiated, all without really establishing a formal project budget and putting it in our CIP in a way that will carry over and account for revenue. So I'm going to have some more for you at the next meeting.
Okay. Any questions, Barbara or Ira?
No.
I just, well, this is it. Okay, but we're going to talk about the budget.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, okay. Let's move to public comment. Do we have anyone in Zoom?
It's just
Barbara, okay, no one in the office. Let's move to 5.1 scheduled bills. Any questions from committee members or comments from you?
At this moment, there is in the packet, I believe in this packet, my reimbursement request for my living expenses back in July. So, all you're into it being, I believe, in this schedule of bills. I'm not sure if it made it or not, but
I don't see it. Can you do one item?
Never seen that.
maybe oh no, it's not in here. It's going to go in the next one. It apparently didn't get entered, which is fine.
Next scheduled bills.
Can wait till next month, but it will be in the next one's one. There's nothing else that particularly that would stand out too much right now. You'll see the manhole repairs. We were purchased a few manholes for replacement on Montgomery Avenue. That's what that activity is. While we were doing the projects, it was a good time for us to make sure they had lifted to the right level. So all of those got replaced.
Did we share that cost with Laura Moran?
Yeah,
Montgomery Ave?
I believe so. Yeah, just look. And I think they cut a little bit of discount too. So we're not paying the whole cost of the project. Really, they're just looking for us to cover the cost of a manhole getting replacement. They don't do it. So pretty good deal.
Let's move then to 6.1, where we talk about the budget timeline and process. And Ken, you gave me this proposed budget calendar.
Yes.
I'm wondering if you can share it so Barbara can see it?
Yes.
And Barbara can share it. I'm sorry?
Yes, sure.
Barbara, I'm going to email this over to you.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Okay, it should be in your mailbox, you know. So,
And can you share that with Ira and me as well?
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
the calendar I shared with you was kind of the calendar that I had envisioned we would be able to follow. Obviously, my arrival here and the times have kind of put this calendar slightly off. I put some notes to go along with each of the points of progress. My hope is to essentially have the first staff direct proposal done next week and ready to be workshopped. Ideally, maybe at our meeting prior to council. But if that's not an appropriate time, I certainly can adjust that. The following meeting intended to continue off wherever we were in the prior and also discuss utility.
Wait, I'm sorry to interrupt, Ken. So the preliminary budget proposal workshop would be 10-4?
Well, the first one actually would be before our business meeting this month. Well, that's the plan.
Oh, so we're at the business meeting this month. So
Oh,
October.
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. So it needs to be, yeah, we pushed that October. I'm sorry. I didn't have this updated.
Yeah, so that's instead of tonight.
So, yeah.
10-4 at a workshop.
10-4. Yes, you're correct.
Okay.
And by that time too, we'll include utilities. So yeah, there won't be any delay on that.
And then would we could we review that second draft, then the follow-up budget workshop would then be the 18th at our business meeting?
Absolutely.
Okay.
As I noted below, it's just a tentative schedule.
19th. I'm giving the wrong date.
So,
It's the 5th and the 19th. The Wednesday. Okay, sorry to interrupt.
So we can correct that and say the 10-4 being the first introduction.
10-5.
I'm sorry, 10-5.
Yep. And then 10-19 for the follow-up.
And I have the workshop meeting for November in there as well, but again, you could put in as many as you'd like, leading up to the December date. So,
I think that puts us on track then at 11-2. With the final approval required at the 21st.
right.
So I guess I want to open it up then to council and yourself to any support that you need.
But look, I will do my very best to get these drafts out to you before the meeting. And if you spot anything that doesn't look right or doesn't make sense or whatever, let me know. And I'll go ahead and include that for a follow-up amendment in advance of the meeting so that people can see some of the things that I had changed in there to correct. So that we can keep moving forward without having to deal with a lot of the minor errors and those sorts of things, and just focus on the real substance of what you guys want to do. I want to introduce a 5 to 10 year capital improvement plan. And this process I'd like to do would include forecasting doing much better forecasting on revenue, and also involve how we, a discussion on how we're going to set our priorities on managing fund balance, and discussion about how we will approach funding projects, whether it is pay as you go, that meaning pay up front, or financing ahead, or doing some sort of combination on certain projects. Right now, the trajectory looks like, well, we're going to have to really review the capital plan and take another look at it. There have been a lot of circumstances that have changed since the last time you looked at it, and I think there will be some significant issues and things for you guys to discuss and work out. So hopefully with the staff here, we'll put together something that will hopefully highlight to you the areas where we need your direction and what we want to do. So I don't know if you guys, were there balance sheets in your treasurer's report?
There were not.
Okay, well, we're going to start having those. They're not always going to be reconciled for receivables or payables, but they will show you where we're at in terms of cash and fund balance. And that's one of the things that we're going to be having the discussion about, is tracking, how much money we're saving, how much we're carrying over, how much, all those sorts of things. The other thing will be looking into, and this is really something we very much need, is a new accounting system that will better allow us make budgeting a lot easier, allow us to implement best practices in budgeting. QuickBooks is great for a small business, but it's not very appropriate for our type of application. It's not designed for accounting level type bookkeeping. You can delete entries in there, and you're not supposed to do that, right? But it gives you the ability to do that. That's just one example of things I don't like to see in accounting software, and it's hard to be able to track those activities. Now, I'm not saying anybody did anything nefarious, far from it, but there's a lot of work we have to do to kind of clean up our chart of accounts. There are inconsistencies, duplicate codes and stuff that kind of make it a little difficult on the forecasting side to kind of see the consistent trends and patterns we need to put together a budget estimate. So those are all the other items that will come as part of this budget discussion as well.
Can I ask, what do other boroughs use if they don't use QuickBooks? What are you recommending we move to?
Well, there are a variety of different software packages, and I'm certainly not suggesting you pay for the most expensive one in any measure. But there are specific ones that are designed for municipal local government use, for accrual, modified accrual type based accounting, which is the type of function we use here. And they allow us to integrate between funds. Right now, we have to treat our funds like independent enterprises. And so we have independent bank accounts and independent funds, all of which restrict our cash flow. Because we may have a cash flow to float something, but because we have all these counts between different funds, it's very hard for us to keep track of that and be quicker at being able to flow different expenditures. Now that's something that on your end, you won't have to be terribly involved in for the most part. It's really just a matter of us transferring between accounts to make sure there is a balance there. But the thing is that the way things have been historically booked here, there are dozens of cash accounts. in accounting, usually you have one cash and investment account. That's your liquid assets. And between your funds, you add those up. That's the cash you have. And you use that amorphous number to divide out your assets in a way in which you maintain liquidity, you gain interest on low risk investments, mainly say CDs and mutual funds and those sorts of things. And those type of practices will allow us to maintain the ability to earn interest on the balances that we're not putting to work, but also allows us to have liquidity when we need it. It's just a lot simpler that way. Right now, the way everything is set up, the reconciliation process is twice as complicated because there's these added cash accounts. They work for people, and QuickBooks is kind of designed to utilize that kind of structure, but it's not very conducive for our operations in terms of how we manage cash. So there's that element. There are some things that exist right now in our budget that are like pass-through revenues and expenses, like union dues, for instance. They don't even need to be in our budget. They should exist in our balance sheet, be reported in our balance sheet, but they're not revenues for the borough. It's not really our money. We're holding it fiduciary, paying it on behalf of the employee. And so it needs to be booked differently. But all these different numbers that we have in our budget, they're not overly significant, but they do skew things. So there's things that need to be moved. And this is where I'm talking about the chart of accounts. There's also duplicate coding, some coding that doesn't really match. And, we've kind of blocked a lot of activities into like one department. So it's kind of hard to see how a department is functioning when you're lumping all the stuff in. Take, for instance, my department. It has actually several other sub-departments in it. And for me, as a budgeting tool, and for you, watching how I am managing my budget, it's hard to keep track of, what's what.
Yeah, so what is the time frame for making this change?
I'm not looking to implement everything now. My hope is that next year we can still work on refining the chart of accounts and implement things with budget amendments rather than doing something. There's not enough staff. There's a lot of things that still need to be done, but I am going to make some of these minor changes with the council's consent and yours, so that the budget more appropriately reflects operations. I think it's beneficial for you to see some of these costs that I don't think are broken out for you. Your retiree liability costs. It's not easy for you to see in your budget.
Yeah, but that wasn't the question I asked. When would you anticipate switching to it?
Oh, I'd love to do a calendar year, right? Because it's the cleanest way to do it. We start booking everything in the new system. We don't have to deal with, working between two different systems. I mean, we might, in terms of looking at old data, but you can migrate data into the new system.
So the new budget will be January 1. I hear you saying we'll be on this new software system.
Yeah, I'm just suggesting that probably a more realistic goal would be the following January. There's a lot going on right now, and you haven't. I don't know if you've had any luck hiring, filling the position, but it's a big project to take on to switch budget systems at a time when we're barely, we're just trying to keep things working. So
I don't disagree with you. The timing of when that should be implemented could actually be pushed out 6 months too. I don't know.
But I'm just my observation, because I've been involved in my career in a lot of these rollout of software systems that
This wouldn't be my first.
It's not my first I'm involved in right now. I'm telling you that there's a lot going on right now.
I won't disagree with you on that.
Barbara, any questions or comments?
No, other than I really would strongly recommend listening to Ira's experience because I've had that experience too. And I know there are things that are being done in ways that make it more challenging to work with. But I don't hear you saying that there is anything that is critical to fix right now. And so I just would encourage you to think about the timing of this so that when you are doing this, you don't find yourself in the situation where you can't get the new system to work. You need the old system, but you're not, it's just, I've been there too, where you're switching software systems and
phasing out immediately and not having the other, I understand that, but I am confident that we can do it and we can do it right, especially with a bookkeeper on staff, getting ourselves prepped and implementing even at Q2 good work.
Well, where do we stand on that bookkeeper?
Well, we had 2 interviews yesterday. We're having another interview tomorrow. We're hoping that, of the pool, one of the candidates, stands out. We've had interviews for the other position as well. So there is interest in the jobs, and I'm not hopeful and optimistic that we'll fill it. But am I prepared to tell you when the timeline of implementation is? No. I mean, in the perfect world, I like it calendar year. It's clean. Right? When we're preparing our financial statements and producing the reports we need for the auditor, it's nice and clean because we pull it in one system. But understandably, how we approach this will require more planning. I still think it is very important. It's making my work, prepping your budget, extremely difficult because things were supposed to be tracked in a pattern and in a way that would allow me to be able to estimate it, and it wasn't. And there weren't any other spreadsheets created to supplement that. So, yeah, I have to go through and I have to follow some of this stuff.
I understand. I'm just trying to.
And that to me seems like even more of an effort than just, going forward if it's not addressed.
Well, I guess the point I make, because again, I'm going through this right now. The problem is that you actually have to understand, how the old one works to move it to the new one, because you can't set things up in the new system unless you found those missing, the data. You've got to, load it up.
To an extent.
Yeah.
However, when you close out a fiscal year,
Yeah.
you don't really get to go back in and make changes. So it's, what we're going to be looking to do is make the appropriate changes and to have the references so that we can track back to the data so we know what is what. And that can be done.
Yeah, all the things you have to understand the old thing in order to migrate to the new thing. But I'm not.
And that is
not believe
a spot on point, which I won't dispute with you in any way.
Yeah.
And is there, assuming this is above the skill set of the bookkeeper to help set this up and migrate it over to your point that you have to understand the old to do the new. But, is this something where we could look at hiring kind of, I don't want to use the word subcontractor, but consultant to do this?
Absolutely.
So you're just consulting?
Yeah, we're going to need, I think we would need someone that's just.
Beyond the bookkeeper?
Yeah, I just know all those other things going on right now.
Yeah, hence my question is, do you want to put in a budget line for for a consultant to help us.
I'm not opposed to that, and I think that would be extremely helpful.
Yeah,
Especially if we end up with a person who lacks the accounting background. But I am hopeful and aiming for somebody who has accounting background. We had a very promising candidate we interviewed just this week that definitely had the background that I was looking for. But
So you could delegate this to hopefully that position and just supervise.
I mean, I'd still need to be part of it, yes, but I wouldn't have to lead it, and a lot of that work could be led by that person.
Barbara, any comments?
No, you stole my comment. I was going to suggest someone to help with it.
And there's more thought that needs to go into it, and it's certainly not ready. I don't have quotes on software packages, and we need something that's, financially feasible and not obscenely expensive. And those products are out there, but somebody still has to have the time to look for that too. So,
I mean, that's something we could put out in the PSAB and just ask other boroughs, what are you using?
good. Well, and I've done that actually.
Okay.
So I have the list, but I have to now contact the companies and ask them for quotes. So, and usually they'll do quotes based on our size, let's say our budget or population or something to that effect. They'll have different fee structure. So there's still quite a bit of work that needs to be done to finish that. Don't get me wrong, the budget can be finished. We know by no means dealing with something that isn't workable, but there are inconsistencies. And I'll explain to you some of just a quick example. We have some large projects right now that we were working. EV, we were working some other stuff for the HVAC and whatnot. And instead of consistently coding it to one line item, one fund, they were coded between capital and general fund. And because QuickBooks is not integrated, I have to go between these two separate ledgers and put together the data that I need and then come up with the journal corrections in order to book it consistently where it needs to be so that it's useful to us.
Yeah.
And, and the persons who were coding just didn't know because, they were well intended. What they coded it to is similar in description to what they were coding, but it wasn't based in the project. Nobody was collecting the invoices needed to do the reporting for any of our grants. I've been doing that and trying to find them and dig them up. The accounting system, because it's been coded in different areas, makes that difficult for me to confirm which is which. So that's the problem. And it certainly was not intentional. I want to be clear. I don't believe anybody set out to do anything wrong. There was just miscoding.
So I think that we probably all agree in FNA here that you need to come up with a system that fits your management style and adjust it as you see fit. I do, being mindful that we probably only have like 15 minutes left, do have two questions about this proposed budget calendar. If we can move on. The first is that we have typically solicited budget requests from committees, commissions, and community organizations that we fund. So I guess I just want to ask, have we asked community group, commissions, NBA for a budget request?
No,
Can we?
of course.
Okay.
I did not inherit any calendar. I made this up on my own. I didn't have anything to work off of. Now that doesn't mean there isn't a calendar. It's just I could not find it on the server, and I searched for one a couple of times and have been unsuccessful. So absolutely, community group requests, and there is still time for us to do that. I suggest we get the word out now because the capital budget is likely to be pretty tight going into next year.
So,
There are quite a few projected increases in the budget, so
so there is a PowerPoint, the presentation from the 2022 budget from October 6th with the preliminary budget, and there is on slide 22, the budget requests. So you can see all those you can see a list of who requested, what the purpose was, what the amount was, and how they were tied to the comp plan. Just to give you an idea of, the library, the fire company, the Shade Tree Commission, the NBA.
now I have talked to the fire department.
Okay, though that comprehensive stuff.
But I did not get to everybody. The department heads did some of the outreach. I know that, Jeff has reached out to the tree commission and has spoken to them, and he included that in his budget proposal. So some of the outreach has happened through some of the department heads, but I agree with you. I doubt all the new groups have been contacted.
Okay, and that list is here, and also if you want to run it by, I can add any, like the NBA, the Civic Association, the library.
I would appreciate if you want to put anything down on a list for me to reach out to.
Okay.
I did talk to the library though. Basically anything that was, anything that was involved with the borough department, that includes even with Yentis, with Davine. I spoke to all of them. It's just the unaffiliated community groups. Well, you know what I mean. Not directly affiliated community groups.
Yeah, I can get that list. Barbara and are you comfortable if I just send that list? Okay. And I can definitely, if you don't have this budget presentation, I can share that with you. Sometimes it's hard on SharePoint to find stuff, so I will send you that.
Was that in the budget folder?
I just did the search on the budget. It's presentation preliminary budget on SharePoint. It's 7B.
So I have SharePoint that's like linked in my file explorer, and I couldn't find it in that.
You know what, Ken, I'll email you. It just doesn't link. Right.
And I have nothing going back to traditional calendar. Don't get me wrong, I just made that because I had no idea where to start. I thought that would be just kind of a reasonable starting point.
And there's a very, if you look in the October 6th workshop package, I just go to narberthborough.gov and look in the meeting materials. There's a very extensive presentation on the budget with, I think this is part of what Cindy's referring to, where requests were coming from for spending from various groups. And I'm scrolling through it because it's really long. It's taken me a while to get through it. I'm pretty sure there's a calendar in there as well for process. So it's there. I can't speak to where it might be in SharePoint just now. I'd have to do some searching, but
that's what I just sent them. You're talking about that.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. I couldn't tell which one because there's.
Yeah.
I have it now.
Okay, and then there's also actually look at this. I created this. I can send this to
On
you.
a side note, I have a question.
Yeah.
The budget information that I inherited did not include some of the changes that I saw in the bookkeeping system, which leads me to suggest that there were budget amendments that were done earlier this year. Do any of you know anything about that?
No, but I would definitely encourage you. Samantha was pretty open that we could contact her and ask this question, so I would feel free to email her to ask. Can you give an example of something that?
Well, there were amended line items that had different figures from the budget that you've approved, at least in December. Now, I'm not saying that there wasn't an amendment that was brought to you. I think there had to have been, because there were numbers changed. And I was curious if you knew which meeting, that maybe there were amendments that were considered.
I think I would have to know what line item or project it was to think about when we discussed it.
If you can give an example, I might be able to remember.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, even in the administration budget, there have been changes in certain line items. As I was trying to reconcile the approved budget from the end of last year to what was in the accounting system, it did not match. Now, I do know that we haven't done the closing journal entries yet for the year, the corrected journal entries. From what I can tell, they were not entered when they were received in February or March. I have those. I have not yet had those entered. And that could be part of it, but generally the journal corrections don't adjust budget totals. So I don't know.
So I guess you can give us an example. We can all, if you even email that to us, maybe we can think back
Okay.
and see. And the next is, so with the list of budget requests as part of this process, we also had a grant schedule and prediction. I sent that email in SharePoint just to you, Ken, Margaret and I, if you want it, I can email it to you quickly.
That's the grant spreadsheet that we've looked at a number of times. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
It's a bit lacking in certain things.
Well, if
I
you
don't have any of the grant reporting deadlines, any of the important contact information in the grant summary information that I have. And I've seen the spreadsheet that does, at least it does summarize what grants we have, and I'm not cutting it down, but in terms of utility for me, it's missing a lot of the to-do lists that we need to finish. And I've seen that document. I've used that to kind of identify what's out there, but it's inadequate, at least on its own. I'm assuming there must be some sort of supporting document that is with it for the staff side that kind of kept track of that, but I have not been able to find any of the project folders with invoices and project tracking. I haven't found any of that.
So we do have the grants. So I guess I'm suggesting, like, Samantha really put together, here's a list and a calendar of grants, and this is going to inform the budget. She was very successful in getting some.
I want to be clear. I'm not disparaging her. She very much had financial competency. I'm just having difficulty understanding where things were organized and where they were placed.
So will you, with the budget, then put together your own kind of grant forecasting that would inform the budget?
Absolutely.
In a timeline.
We need to forecast not only grants, but we need to forecast where we envision our tax levies to be, where we envision our fund balances to be at, when we might anticipate borrowing. All those things need to be thoughtfully prepared, not to commit you guys. It's just a vision plan of how we're going to make our goals work. You're not beholden to what's in there 5 years from now, but the idea is it's your tool to identify a way to make something work. And so that's my goal, to prepare that document for you.
Okay. And FNA did kind of unanimously support putting money to have a consultant to help with writing those grants. Simone Collins was very helpful in helping us secure 3 grants. And I personally would encourage us to write that in as a budget line.
Yeah, but he's talking about something more basic, which is like we need to find like where.
Well, I think we can.
So
Yeah.
I want to cash flow what we planned and committed to. And then also build a plan that allows us to stay the course, at least to the extent you want to, of the things that you have planned out to do. But, I've looked at the documents and there's still, and again, it's probably just a stylistic difference. I'm not implying my predecessor was anything but well-intended and good at what she did. All I'm saying is I am not able to find some of the things that I've been looking for. I wasn't able to, Ellen was not able to find it for me, and I wasn't able to get Missy to help. He helped, but she wasn't able to find a lot of the documents either. So
Is it possible you could put together a list of the things that you're looking for, and we could reach out to Samantha?
Yeah, and ask. Great idea.
I will contact her.
Yeah. I also, here's a list of grant opportunities in this folder. I'm just saying, as part of the budget, if we could have grant forecasting opportunities schedule. And then as part of that, as Barbara and I do we still recommend as FNA that we build in budget lines for a consultant to help with this aggressively grant approval?
Yeah, well, I don't know.
I think you guys, before you go ahead and commit to expenditures, I really encourage you to wait to see your financial picture. There are conditions that have changed. Our financial position is interesting, and I would hope to get you some more of the balance sheet so you can actually understand where we are. Obviously, we have an accrual-based accounting. We anticipate funds through the year, but we're going to have some limitations going into next year, and we're going to need to make some decisions on spending priorities and what we'll be focused on and what won't. And I just encourage you to wait until I'm able to present to you that picture. And then, I encourage you to have at it and decide what it is you want to do.
Well, we can discuss that on 10.5, is get a picture of what that is that you're saying and then evaluate what you're saying here is kind of what it seems like there's going to be a real difference than where we thought we were. And then that can be modified for that 1019.
I can tell you that the financial statements were not correct. I discovered that the fund balance, at least 500,000 of what was in the capital fund, was debt proceed and should have been listed as restricted. It wasn't. And there are other bond proceeds that are sitting in, I think, the general fund that is under similar conditions. That should have been reported differently. Okay? I don't blame anybody for that error, but there are material differences in that. And so there's a lot of things that we just need to address. And it's not, in material, I don't mean like money is missing. It wasn't reported the way it should have been. It's not money that you have committed to a particular process. It's not an appropriation that you can change. It's conditioned on a contract. You can't use it for anything. So it has to be reported differently.
So with knowing that we're at 7:23, I want to give us time to switch over to the other Zoom meeting and get set up for 7:30. I'm going to call for adjournment, but just to say that FNA will request significant time on the 10.5 agenda for the workshop presentation for the preliminary budget workshop. And I'll communicate that to Fred will let you know to please assume that we're going to have a significant conversation on the 5th with a follow-up on the 19th. Barbara?
Can I just see, is it appropriate for this part-time parking controller request to be discussed then at the full council meeting? There's nothing that finance and administration has to do in advance of that? Is that?
That's a personnel issue.
It is, and I just thought it was within the purview of your committee mission.
Okay, well, let's ask that we move it over to the agenda.
It is on the agenda.
Okay.
It is on the agenda, but I just wanted to make sure there was nothing that Ken needed from us before it could be talked about at workshop. Okay, great.
All right, let's move to adjourn then.
So moved.
Great,
Second,
great. Done. Thank you all.
I'll see you in the other meeting room.
Yeah.